And I don't see how what you're saying actually improves students' knowledge of biology. Really what you're doing is just, promoting ignorance, really.
Well, I disagree. They're not gills. They are never gills in humans.
No, they're not gills. Nobody's saying they're gills.
Well, they're
pharyngeal
implying
pouches.
They're implying
No, they're not. They're implying that they develop from similar precursor structures.
Okay, let's assume that all animals on the planet develop in a similar way.
They don't.
They don't, right?
No.
But if they did, even if the pharyngeal gill pouches develop in a similar way, which is what you're implying or saying.
They start out as the
okay.
same tissues.
Does that prove common ancestor, or could that prove common designer?
That's where you're wrong. I think it does not prove conclusively. It supports the view of common ancestry.
Why doesn't it support the view of common designer?
Well, why would it support the view of a common designer?
Well, if I notice there's 8 or 10 different types of bridges in the world. There's the truss type, the suspension type.
Right.
Okay. I notice all of them have similar construction designs. They all start with a foundation.
Right.
Wow. That proves they're all evolving from spider webs.
No, it has nothing to do with
That's
evolution.
my point.
Because these things, no. Because a bridge is a horrible analogy to a living thing. It has nothing in common with a living thing.
I know, living things are a billion times more complicated, so it makes the problem worse.
Exactly, and they reproduce, which is one of the fundamental tenets of evolution. A thing can't evolve unless it reproduces. Here we're talking about reproducing systems.
Okay, but my point
explain to me what this has to do with a common designer, because I really don't get it.
I'm sure you don't get it, but I'm going to try to help you. Okay, the commonality, the similarities between the way organisms develop or between the way that they look. Chimpanzees and humans both have 2 eyes and both have similar color hair and both chew with their mouth open. So what does that prove? Well, it doesn't prove anything, but it could be interpreted as common ancestor, or it could be interpreted as common designer. Why aren't the kids ever shown the common designer?
You don't understand exactly what similarity has to do with common ancestry. You put up a slide showing a classic book, a picture from a textbook of vertebrate limbs, and you say, well, look at these vertebrate limbs. Evolutionists say this means that they had a common ancestor. And then you say, well, this could just mean that they had a common designer. Well, if that's the case, do starfish have a different designer?
Well, let me ask you a question now. Is it true that the textbooks show the kids the similar 4-limb structures, as I showed like 10 examples of in my seminar?
Yep.
And then the textbook says, this is evidence of a common ancestor. Is that what the book says?
It is evidence of common ancestor.
No. It is evidence that they're similar. Yep. Why are they similar? Well,
that's a good question.
There you go. It's not evidence of a common ancestor. It's evidence that they're similar.
What you don't understand is this explains the distribution of similarities. Why do all these things have, why do all these animals have 4 limbs with the same structure? But why are they also always vertebrates? Why can't beetles have the same 4-limb structure if they also had a common designer? Why not?
Well, why do all motorcycles made by Suzuki, Honda, and everybody else have 2 wheels, and all cars have 4 wheels? It's a common design.
Machinery is a horrible example. This has nothing to do with living things. They're not living things. I don't see why you insist on using machinery.
Well, I'm trying to get you to see.
Well, I recall from my old biology classes in high school that they would oftentimes, all the time actually, and I recall one time specifically, they used a spring mechanism to contrast a biological function. And
sure, you can draw an analogy to a functional system to employ physical laws to explain how something works. But we're talking about where things come from.
Well, I'm trying to give analogies to help people understand. It is true that there are similarities between many different types of vertebrate animals, but even in the vertebrate kingdom, if you look at vertebrates, there are bazillions of differences.
Exactly.
Okay.
But how do you explain the distribution of similarities and differences with a common designer? How do you explain the nested hierarchy of form?
Okay. Let's take a nested hierarchy of, if I don't compare it with living things, I have to compare it with something inanimate. That's about the 2 choices that there are.
Right, but again, it's irrelevant because inanimate objects don't reproduce.
Well, I understand
that. And so they don't have the potential to have common ancestors. So it's an irrelevant analogy. It's ridiculous.
Okay. Have we ever observed, let's just take dogs, for example.
Yes.
There are 400 recognized breeds of dogs, plus all the mutts in between. Has anybody ever observed a dog produce something that would be classified as non-dog?
No, because that's exactly how evolutionists classify things in the first place. They classify things by common ancestry. So if it came from a dog, it would still be called a dog.
Wait. Think what you just said. Evolutionists classify things by common ancestry.
Yep.
So if they're classifying it based on their theory, of course it's going to match their theory. Duh.
Not really, actually.
Yeah, think about it.
No, think about it, because it would actually be a falsifying point if you could find something that couldn't be classified. Take something like a vertebrate that can't be classified.
Okay, where's the platypus fit in?
Okay, this is brilliant. I love this. I'm so glad you picked it, the platypus. This is absolutely brilliant. What does the platypus have to do with anything?
Platypus reproduces. You get upset when I say something doesn't reproduce. The platypus reproduces.
Yeah, let's take the platypus.
Okay. What did it evolve
from? I happen to
from?
be looking at a platypus picture right now.
Okay, what did it evolve from?
It's a mammal.
Are you okay? You're sure it's a mammal?
I'm absolutely 100% certain it's a mammal.
Because somebody decided, here's the qualifications of a mammal, right? If I decide to call my finger a hammer, then it's a hammer, okay?
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's
people have to agree that that's what it is. There has to be some basis for agreement.
All the people have to agree.
Okay, your finger is not going to be called a hammer because I'm not going to agree to call it a hammer because it doesn't function what everybody else calls a hammer.
Okay, well, everybody else doesn't agree with your evolution theory. I mean, 60% of Americans
do
not agree with it.
Yeah, but every biologist does.
No, they do not.
Well, 99% of them.
No,
big deal.
You're making up that number.
Okay, whatever.
According to the New York Times.
Anyways, let's talk about this platypus.
Let's get back to the question.
The platypus.
What did the platypus evolve from?
A mammal.
It is a mammal already. It's still a mammal.
Yes.
Was it, at some time in the past, long ago and far away, a non-platypus?
No, it can't be, because we're talking about a platypus. We're talking about the origin of a platypus.
Yes.
So that ontological object, a platypus, originates from a prior organism, which we would call, we don't know what, because we don't have an example of it, which is fine, okay? What we're talking about is its common ancestor.
Okay. Does the platypus have a common ancestor with a dragonfly? If you go far enough back.
Yes.
You believe it does?
Yes.
Now, do you see that what you said is a faith statement, not a science statement?
No, I don't see it as a faith statement
don't.
because somebody could actually falsify that statement. Okay, because
How would you falsify that?
Yeah, how would you falsify that?
How would you falsify that? Okay. Take an example of... Okay, well, take your example of a platypus and a dragonfly.
Okay.
And say, what would we expect to see if two things share something in common with each other, or if two things have a common ancestor? If two things are closely related to each other, we would expect to see more in common with those two things.
Wait.
You're
giving evidence to support this. How do you falsify it? You just said you can
How do you falsify it?
Yeah, how would you falsify it?
Not what would make you think
this.
Well,
let's take an example. Let's find a chimeric form. Let's take something like, okay, well, what makes these two things, what unites these two things, okay? We know that they're both bilaterally symmetric.
Okay.
We know that they have the capacity to form paired appendages and paired sensory organs.
Okay.
We know that they're eukaryotes and that they're multicellular.
Very good.
This is a unique character combination.
So they share properties. Therefore, they're related.
No, this is a unique character combination. Okay?
Yeah, well, you just said...
This combination... No, this is not just sharing properties. This is a unique character combination. Okay? Find an example of a dragonfly, say, with a plant cell wall, or a dragonfly that uses chlorophyll.
Hold on. If I found a dragonfly with a plant cell wall, you would herald this as evidence that they are compared and related to plants.
No, I wouldn't actually, because I wouldn't explain that, because there's an agreed upon phylogeny of the animals and plants. And so if you violate that phylogeny, then the phylogeny is falsified. If you find something that falsifies this, which would be a perfect example would be something chimeric, like a dragonfly with a cell wall.
Think about how ridiculous
then you would have disproven the theory, or you would have
saying,
at least falsified that hypothesis.